I was standing in the packed project review room when Marshall Trent leaned in behind me. His voice was low enough for only me to hear. "If you want to keep leading this project, you know how to make me comfortable." His hand brushed the small of my back as every muscle in my body locked. I didn't turn around. I didn't breathe. The worst part wasn't the words. It was that he'd done this for months, and no one believed me when I tried to raise alarms. But that day, something inside me snapped. My name is Lauren Keating. I'm 31 years old, and until all of this started, I genuinely loved my job at Pinnacle Solutions. I worked hard for 5 years to earn my leadership role on the digital transformation team. I believed in my team. We celebrated wins together, supported each other through tight deadlines, and built something I was proud of. I wasn't just good at my job, I was excellent. My project completion rate was the highest in the department, and my team consistently exceeded targets. Marshall Trent became our team director 8 months ago. Everyone loved him immediately. He was charming, funny, and had this way of making people feel seen. He'd remember birthdays, ask about your weekend, bring coffee to morning meetings. The executives adored him. My colleagues thought he was a breath of fresh air. During his first week, he complimented my presentation in front of everyone. "Lauren's the kind of talent that makes my job easy," he said. I smiled, grateful for the recognition. That was mistake number 1. The first comment I ignored came 3 weeks after he started. We were alone in the break room. He looked at my dress and said, "That color really works for you. You should wear it more often." The way he said it made my skin crawl. His eyes lingered too long. His smile had an edge I couldn't name. I told myself I was overreacting, he was just being friendly, but something in my gut whispered that this wasn't normal. I pushed the feeling down and went back to work. Marshall started testing boundaries slowly. He'd schedule one-on-one meetings more frequently than necessary. He'd sit closer than needed during reviews. He called me kiddo, even though I was only 7 years younger than him. During team lunches, he'd find ways to sit next to me, his leg occasionally brushing mine under the table. Each incident was small enough to question, small enough that complaining would make me look paranoid, small enough that I convinced myself I was imagining things. I wasn't. By month 3, isolation began. Marshall started making subtle comments to my coworkers. "Lauren gets overwhelmed with complex projects," he'd say casually. "She's not great under pressure." None of it was true. My performance reviews had always been outstanding, but his words planted seeds of doubt. I noticed colleagues hesitating before asking my opinion. Projects I'd normally lead were quietly reassigned. The whispers started. Marshall said Lauren's been struggling lately. He was building a narrative, and I was the villain in his story. The first feedback session happened on a Friday evening. Marshall called me into his office after most people had left. He closed the door and gestured to the chair across from his desk. Then he moved his own chair around to sit beside me, our knees almost touching. "I want to discuss your growth trajectory," he said. His tone was professional, but his body language wasn't. He leaned in when he spoke. His hand rested on the armrest between us, fingers drumming inches from my leg. I felt trapped. That night, Marshall made his first real threat. "You have potential, Lauren," he said, his voice dropping. "But potential needs nurturing. Some people understand how to grow faster in this company. They're more flexible with leadership expectations." The implication hung in the air like smoke. My throat tightened. I stood up quickly, mumbled something about a deadline, and left. My hands shook as I drove home. That was the night I realized I needed to start documenting everything. Every comment, every meeting, every uncomfortable moment. Began saving everything quietly. Screenshots of calendar invites showing late one-on-one meetings, notes with timestamps of inappropriate comments, emails where he'd override my decisions without explanation. I created a folder on my personal laptop labeled Performance Records. It was clinical, methodical work. No rage, no panic, just cold strategy. I knew I couldn't afford to be emotional. I needed evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I was building a case, even though I didn't know yet how I'd use it. 2 months later, Marshall humiliated me publicly. During a quarterly review with executives, he interrupted my presentation 3 times. He questioned my data, implied my conclusions were rushed, and suggested my team wasn't meeting standards. None of it was true. The numbers were solid, but he delivered his criticism with such confidence that the room shifted. I saw doubt flash across the executives' faces. My jaw tightened. My breathing became shallow. I finished the presentation, smiled professionally, and walked out. That wasn't the worst part, though. The worst part came the next day. Marshall announced he was reassigning the Westfield project. My project. The one I'd spent 6 months developing from scratch. He gave it to Brandon, a junior analyst with half my experience. Brandon needs the opportunity to stretch himself, Marshall explained in the team meeting. Everyone avoided my eyes. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This was punishment for not playing along, for not being flexible. Marshall thought he'd broken me. He was wrong. The whisper campaign intensified after that. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop. Colleagues who used to seek my advice started going to others. One afternoon, I overheard 2 team members talking. Marshall said Lauren's been unstable lately. He's worried about her. My stomach turned. He was isolating me systematically, destroying my reputation so thoroughly that when I finally spoke up, no one would believe me. He wanted me alone and powerless. For a while, it worked. I felt like I was drowning. I tried HR once. It was a mistake. I met with Patricia Wells, our HR manager, and explained that Marshall made me uncomfortable. I kept it vague, testing the waters. Patricia listened with a sympathetic expression. "Marshall is well loved here?" she said carefully. "Are you sure you're not misinterpreting his management style? He can be intense." She promised to monitor the situation, but nothing changed. If anything, Marshall became bolder. He knew HR wouldn't challenge him. That's when I stopped playing defense and started preparing for war. I began studying Marshall's patterns. He sent his most aggressive emails late at night, usually after 9 p.m. He became careless when stressed, his mask slipping to reveal the anger underneath. He hated being contradicted in front of others. His ego couldn't handle it. During executive audits, he became harsher with everyone, especially women. He drank too much at company events and got sloppy with his comments. Every behavior was a data point. Every weakness was leverage I stored away. He had one fatal flaw: overconfidence. He never imagined I was watching. The trigger came during executive audit week. The company's leadership team was reviewing all department operations, and Marshall was under pressure to prove his division's value. He became impossible, snapping at people over minor issues, sending harsh correction emails, micromanaging every task. The stress made him reckless. During one team meeting, I intentionally contradicted one of his suggestions with a better alternative. It was a small challenge, professionally delivered, but his face flushed red, his jaw clenched. Everyone noticed. 10 minutes after the meeting ended, my phone buzzed with an email from him. The email was brutal. "Your attitude in today's meeting was completely unacceptable. If you cannot align with leadership direction, I will need to reconsider your fit on this team. Your performance evaluation will reflect this behavior." It was a written, time-stamped threat. He'd put his retaliation in writing because he was angry and careless. I read it 3 times, my hands steady. This was one piece of the puzzle. Not enough yet, but significant. I saved it to my folder and waited. He'd give me more. Men like Marshall always did. 3 days later, Marshall called me into his office after hours. The building was nearly empty. Most people had left for the day. "Close the door," he said when I arrived. His tone was cold. I left it open. "We need to discuss your recent attitude," he continued, his voice rising. "Your evaluation is coming up, and frankly, your performance isn't where it needs to be, unless something changes." He left the threat hanging. I met his eyes and said nothing. He didn't know I'd already set up my escape route. The cracks in Marshall's perfect image started showing to others, too. One afternoon, Kayla from accounting pulled me aside in the hallway. "Marshall made a weird comment to me last week," she whispered, "about my outfit. It felt wrong." 2 days later, Brianna from operations said something similar. "He's different with women, have you noticed?" They were scared to speak up officially, but the pattern was there. Multiple women, same behavior. I had testimonies now, witnesses who'd seen his mask slip. But I still needed something undeniable, something he couldn't talk his way out of. I spent a week crafting the perfect email. It was neutral, professional, and devastatingly factual. It simply summarized our recent interactions without accusation or emotion. Per our conversation on October 12th, regarding my attitude and performance evaluation, I wanted to confirm my understanding of your concerns. It laid out his threats in plain language, time-stamped and specific. I saved it in drafts. I was waiting for him to respond first, to give me one more piece of documented evidence. I needed him to incriminate himself completely. The opportunity came during a strategy meeting. Marshall presented a plan that would hurt our team's efficiency. I politely challenged it with data showing a better approach. He didn't just disagree, he exploded. His face turned red, his voice rose. "This is exactly the kind of insubordination I've been talking about," he shouted. The room went silent. He stormed out. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. An email from Marshall. I opened it, and my hands started shaking. He'd written everything down. Every implicit threat now explicit. Every innuendo now clear. He handed me his entire downfall. The email was worse than I'd hoped for. "Your constant challenges to my authority show a fundamental lack of respect for leadership hierarchy. If you want to remain on this team, you need to understand that my decisions are final. Your evaluation will reflect your inability to accept guidance, and I'll be recommending we explore other options for your role unless you adjust your attitude immediately. Some people understand how to work with me. You apparently don't." It was textbook retaliation, documented abuse of power, career threat in writing. Perfect. I didn't wait. I opened my documentation folder and began compiling everything. 8 months of timestamps, screenshots, calendar invites showing excessive one-on-one meetings, notes from witnesses, and now his own emails proving retaliation. I attached them to a professionally worded message addressed to HR, legal, and Marshall's boss, the VP of operations. My email was emotionless and factual. "I'm formally reporting a pattern of harassment and retaliation by Marshall Trent. Please see attached documentation." I hovered over the send button for 3 seconds. Then I clicked it. Silence filled the room. The audit moved fast. By the next morning, 3 executives were conducting interviews. They spoke to me first, asking detailed questions about every incident. I answered calmly, referencing my documentation for dates and specifics. Then they interviewed my team members. Kayla confirmed Marshall's comments. Brianna backed up the pattern. Others mentioned his aggressive behavior during the strategy meeting. The office felt like a pressure cooker. People whispered in hallways. Marshall's door stayed closed all morning. Then he made everything worse by panicking. He started yelling, demanding to know who betrayed him. Marshall was removed mid-afternoon on a Tuesday. Security quietly escorted him out through the side entrance, carrying a box of his personal items. People stared through glass walls as he passed. His face was red, his expression furious. I sat at my desk, breathing freely for the first time in 8 months. The weight I'd been carrying dissolved. My chest felt lighter, my shoulders relaxed. I didn't gloat or celebrate. I just sat there, processing the fact that it was finally over. The man who'd tormented me was gone. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part came 2 weeks later. The company issued a formal apology. HR acknowledged they'd failed to act on warning signs. The VP personally reinstated my leadership of the Westfield project and gave me full autonomy over my team. They initiated company-wide policy changes for reporting harassment. My colleagues apologized for doubting me. But I'd already made my decision. I resigned a month later, not in anger or fear, but in power. I walked away with a glowing reference, severance pay, and something more valuable than any of it: my dignity. 6 months later, I'm thriving at a company where I'm respected and valued. Marshall's still unemployed. The email didn't destroy him. His behavior did. I just stopped letting him hide behind it.